Hello my quilting friends! My name is Leah Day and welcome to this video for the machine quilting party. Today we're going to be piecing the strip sets for this beautiful quilt behind me, and this is a Bargello technique that makes piecing things like this beautiful prism a lot easier. So this is one of those things, you might look at that and go, oh my gosh, that's a whole lot of piecing little itsy bitsy squares and then sewing them all back together again. But I promise you, that's not at all how we do it. So let's get started making the Prism Path quilt together. So I have all of my fabric spread out here for a strip set. And this is just one of each color in the order that I want to piece it. And please don't feel like you have to do a rainbow. You don't. You could change out any colors you want, but you want to make sure that they're always arranged in the same color order every time you piece this together. You're going to piece multiple strip sets like this together in sets of 6 strips. So as far as thread color goes, in the book I mentioned just using a gray color, and that works. It works really well. You know, you can wind one bobbin and it just goes really fast. But you are going to see just a little bit of gray in between those pieces. So if you really want your thread to hide, what you want to do is wind a bobbin of red, one of yellow, and one of blue. And I found just like a half bobbin full will probably be plenty. And what we're going to do is we're going to piece the red down between the red and orange. We'll use the yellow for 2 seams, for the seam between yellow and orange and yellow and green strips. And then for the blue, we'll do the same thing. We'll use that to piece 2 seams, so the one between green and blue and the seam between blue and purple. So by doing it that way, you can match completely with at least one fabric on either side within your strip set. And that's going to make it really match nicely. You won't be able to see that thread at all once we press our seam allowances open. So that's my plan. I'm going to get started with red. I'm going to thread up the machine. And here's one little thing that I hardly ever mention, and that is a little bobbin washer that I put inside my bobbin. This is called a magic bobbin washer. It's just a little Teflon donut, and it just pops inside that metal case. This is also great for top loading bobbins too. This is a side loading bobbin, but it also works in other types of machines too. I do find this really helpful for older machines like mine. Mine was built in the 1980s, and there's just a little bit of extra space in that bobbin case, just a little gap that allows the bobbin to kind of rattle around a little bit. And that bobbin washer really helps the thread to glide and slide more smoothly. It stops backlash. That is the tendency for the bobbin, like the thread to jerk and spin the bobbin backwards the wrong way. You end up with a really bad thread nest on the back of the quilt. So I really think that this is essential. You can find bobbin washers in my quilt shop. Check it out, leahday.com/shop. Another little thing, on my bobbin case, I have this little pigtail and a little hole through the top of it. I like to thread that, and I do find that you might have to lower the tension on your bobbin slightly, thread that tail, and that will generally also get you slightly better tension, slightly more consistent tension, because this little tail brings the thread up closer to the connection with the needle in your machine. So I do find that that's really helpful, and I do that all the time, whether I'm piecing or free motion quilting. It's just a habit. So play around with that. If you happen to have that hole, use it. If you don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Not all machines have it. Okay, so now I'm going to insert this into my machine, get ready to go, and I'm going to thread the top thread, and we're going to get ready to start sewing our strips together. One more thing I like to grab before I begin piecing are 2 scrap chargers. This is just like a 2-inch piece of fabric folded in half, so it's 2 layers. What this does is when you stitch through it, this takes care of all your loose threads, your thread tails. It also ensures that your foot is up at that right height so you can slip your next pieces in really easily. And then it also keeps you in stitching mode. So whenever you finish stitching line, you can grab another scrap charger, or you can go on ahead and grab your next pieces to sew together. And that just keeps it in stitching mode and stops that thread from breaking, which ends up wasting your bobbin thread and takes a lot more time, and it's, you know, it's a stop rather than continuing to go. So I really like to use these scrap chargers. I really find them helpful for piecing. And one other tool that I'm using here, this is my Queen Supreme slider that I use for machine quilting. So I use this for free motion quilting, I use this for walking foot quilting, and here I've slid it down so it's right in front of my machine. It's kind of hanging off the table here a little bit. but I use this to help the fabric slide really smoothly up underneath that foot. It really makes a big difference. So just put it kind of cream side down, the pink side goes down onto the tabletop, and this can sometimes get a little linty and start lifting up. Take it to your sink and just wash it off, and it'll grip your machine bed really nicely again. Okay, so I've got my scrap, I've stitched through it, and now I'm slipping this red and orange strip. I'm going to make sure these are nicely aligned together. I just want these edges to be in nice alignment. I'm not going to worry too much about this top edge where those fabrics were cut across the top. I'm instead going to just worry about these side edges. There we go. That looks really good. Making sure they're stacked up nice on top of each other, and then I'm slipping that right up against the needle. I'm using my knee lifter here. That's why it's bouncing up and down. You could also just reach behind and use your presser foot lifter. So I'm lifting slightly with my knee and pressing those fabrics right up against the needle. And what that does is it ensures the very next stitch you take is right onto those fabrics. So they're not going to slip against one another. Now, it doesn't really matter with strips this long, you know, obviously it's okay if one slips down a little bit, but it's just one of those habits that I really think is good to get into because, you know, if you're piecing something more precise, if you were piecing itsy bitsy tiny little pieces together, then it's a really good tip to always press everything right up against the needle so it kind of gets trapped and locked in place and it's not going to slip out of position. Okay, so as I go, I don't pen these strips together because I find that tends to end up forcing the fabrics together, and that can be bad. That can create some distortion. So instead I just lift up on it, keep it light, keep it fluffy, and just bring those edges in perfect alignment. And then I just press. I've got some good fingertip pressure here with my index finger, and I just press firmly and put my foot down. You can go a little fast here. Once you get it in nice alignment, and you can see I can align about 3 inches or so in front of that foot, and it really helps to have that slippery surface from the Queen Supreme slider. It just helps everything slide right into the machine. Whenever I forget to move it or I'm feeling too lazy to move it, I really notice it. You know, it's one of those things that just feels like piecing takes forever whenever I don't have my slippery slide thing in the front, you know. There we go. That's looking great. So I just lift up that top fabric, whichever one it is, smooth it in place, and the key here is just making sure that these edges stay in nice alignment and make sure that they stay in line with the edge of that foot. I'm using a 1/4 inch presser foot here. It gives you a really nice accurate 1/4 inch seam, and that's going to ensure all of these pieces are going to go together. We're going to make a perfect strip set for our Bargello quilt. So that's how we're going to piece all of our strips together into a strip set. And like I said, you don't have to do a rainbow if you don't want to, but I really think this looks gorgeous. It's so cheerful and bright, and you can find a fat 1/4 pack of these exact colors on my website. That's leahday.com/rainbow boutique. So you can get these exact colors already cut for you into a fat 1/4. So if you want to continue to rethread your machine with the different colors, just go on ahead and stitch through all of the red and orange while you have your machine threaded with red, then switch it out to yellow when you piece these strips on either side of the yellow strip, and then switch one more time to blue and piece blue to the green strip and then blue to the purple strip, and that will create your nice little rainbow strip set. So now let's take this to our cutting board and learn how to cut it into the pieces for our Prism Path quilt. So here is our finished strip set, looking great, and I have taken the time to press those seam allowances open. And I feel like I can do this because I piece with a really short stitch length. I lower my stitch length to 1.5 millimeters. It produces a really tight, secure stitch. It locks those fabrics together. So I press all of those seam allowances open, which makes not only my strip set more accurate, it also makes it much flatter, which is going to be easier to quilt in the end. So now it's time to trim this up. We're going to square off one edge first. So I'm going to line up my ruler, and what I'm doing here, I'm not going to trust these edges or the far end. Instead, I'm trusting the piecing lines here on that strip set. So I'm going to line up some of the lines on the ruler with those piecing lines. Get it nice and straight, press down firmly, and cut across. So what this has done is this has squared off this edge, so we know that this edge is straight to the piecing lines within the shape, and now we can cut our units out of this pieced strip set. So this is how a Bargello usually works. You piece together strips and then you cut from that in order to create the units for your quilt. And if you'd like to learn how to do a much more complex design, definitely check out the Waterfall Bargello workshop. That is a really fun class that I taught, and it's a workshop you can take online with me. And I walk you through step by step how to make a really beautiful waterfall wall hanging. And I love this. This is hanging in my kitchen, actually. Well, it's actually between my kitchen and my living room. And it makes me so happy. I always smile every time I see it. I really love this quilt. So let's see here. What I'm doing is I'm lining up the cut line here, how wide I want my piece to be. And then I'm also lining up, again, some thin lines on my ruler with those piecing lines, with those seam lines. There we go. So I'm lining this up. This looks good. And if you want to know the exact cutting amounts, how big to cut everything, and get it all ready, you can find this pattern in the book, Explore Walking Foot Quilting with Leah Day. Here it is. So come and pick this up at leahday.com/walkingfoot and join in the fun of this cool quilt along. So there we go. I sliced off that piece. I'll cut another one so you can just see how this goes. So I'm lining up the width that I need on my ruler. I'm lining up some thin lines on that ruler with those piecing lines. Press firmly and cut right across. There we go. So you're going to piece your strip sets. You're going to cut up the strip sets into units. And then next week, we're going to begin piecing these together. We're going to lay out our quilt and begin piecing it together. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's it for this quilting tutorial. I hope you learned a lot about piecing this Bargello style and you're excited about giving it a try and making this prism path baby quilt with me. Now, if you'd like to find the quilt pattern, it's in the book, Explore Walking Foot Quilting with Leah Day. This book comes with 7 skill building quilt patterns as well as 30 walking foot quilting designs. And you can find it at leahday.com/walkingfoot. Come and check it out. And until next time, let's go quilt.